Welcome to another episode of the ABCs of ERP and Beyond. Today we'll be diving into the top 5 benefits of using Copilot in Business Central. We should probably caveat that by saying the top 5 for now until we see what else comes out. But nevertheless, with the integration of AI tools like Copilot, businesses can empower their workers to get more done with less effort, from increasing productivity to automating tasks in finance and in marketing, and even the potential for integration in other business cases. We'll explore how Copilot can revolutionize the way you do business. So tune in as we start to unravel some of the new Copilot features that we're starting to see in Business Central. And as ever, I will be going through this with my esteemed co-host, Nirav Shah.
Hello, Peter. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. I like the new lighting that you have there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really brings the best out of you right there. A fantastic light. Excited to be here again. And I know we took a break. We've kind of gone through a few what I would call seasonal, I guess, sicknesses. I don't know.
Yep.
Weather changing type stuff. I've bounced back, and so have you. And back to be happy to be back and talking about things we love to talk about here. Kind of being ERP geeks. I can't believe that we haven't done a Copilot episode yet. Like literally, this has been going on for the last year. We talked about AI, ERP and AI, but we haven't talked about specifically Copilot. So I'm really excited about this. And I think maybe we're doing it at the right time because now we actually have some functionality to talk about that's been out there with at least Business Central, right?
Yep.
And showing, kind of like discussing whether some of the capabilities are there and what's currently available out of the box. And how Copilot in general, I feel like could just up the game, right? For those small and medium-sized businesses that need efficiencies, that need a little bit more of, because they can't employ, data analysts, right? They can't employ, people that are statistical majors and statistical analysts or whatever to constantly review their information and data putting into Business Central. So Copilot is a nice addition for those customers, whereby, this functionality will start crunching some of that data, right, for them, start giving some analytics that they're not used to, automating a lot of tasks. So this is a pretty exciting area for ERP, for Microsoft right now, with the whole OpenAI thing that they bought, and now they're trying to figure out what to do with it. Now they call it Copilot, and now they got the Copilot Studio, and just expanding that functionality through all the rest of its solutions. So super happy to talk about it. I'm sure this is not the first time or the last that we're going to talk about Copilot. So kind of excited to start this episode.
Yeah, we've talked about AI before, but not Copilot, as you said. But like some of this Copilot stuff was in 2023 release 1 for Business Central. But because I think Microsoft got in quite early with OpenAI and that huge investment they made, it's like everything was chucked into preview features. And I kind of ignored it for a while because Microsoft started to do this, and we've seen them doing it with Power BI for the last few years. Is there's so many preview features in the background that like I don't really want to put in production because it might change or it might break something else. So you kind of ignore it. But now we're starting to see some of these come through as GA. So they're either enabled by default in preview or they're now generally available. So it's good time to start talking about this. And at the same time, as well as it's good to talk about this, I feel like all the time we're not talking about it, I'm a million miles behind. Like you open up the news the next day and there's a whole host of stuff that's gone on during the night. And now I'm like, whoa, I'm way behind.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
You're absolutely right. And it's really helpful that Microsoft is releasing. I think they're doing it very carefully too, right? They just don't want to introduce all this new Copilot stuff because it could have a negative effect, right? All of a sudden, you're relying on Copilot to do these transactions that humans or people are generally accustomed to doing, matching bank recs, right? um,
Hmm.
manually typing in product descriptions for marketing
Yep.
tags. People were doing this, and then you just have Copilot doing it kind of overnight. There could be a risk there that it's doing things incorrectly, that could hurt your business. So I'm kind of happy they do it in the features. They are rolling out a lot of functionality, and that you bring up a great point. Everybody should check their features management at least once a month to see what Microsoft is doing. If there's a minor update, a major update that's out there that your environment got upgraded to, it's worth taking a preview look at it. You can always learn more from their links that they have directly in the features management, and then you could turn it on for selected people or for everybody in the database. Always contact your VAR if you have any questions with any of the functionality, because they're going to help you walk you through how to use that functionality, with the pros and cons, whether for your specific business. So you bring up a great point, Peter. The features functionality that there's a ton of stuff in there. It's always worth looking at and seeing if that's something that your business will benefit from.
Yeah, I really like the way that they're approaching this as well. I've heard it from them quite a few times now that the the idea of Copilot is that it's auto suggest, not auto complete. So some of
Mm,
the features that we're going to have a look at, some of the specific features that we're going to have a look at today, you'll notice that they are not autocomplete. They suggest what should be done, and some of the screenshots that we'll throw up as well will show that there's either yes, commit to this, or no, scratch it, delete it. So I
yep.
like the idea that they're making sure that the user's still in control, and this is seen then as a tool to existing users, not a replacement of users. Now, sure, some of the processes and some of the tasks are automated, but it's not automating the entire function. So it's
Hmm.
nice to see that with the development in some of these major companies, they're treating AI as a controlled, balanced approach between the AI itself and the user behind the screen. It's nice to
Yeah.
see these tools being thought about of there's always a delete button, there's always an undo button, and there's
Yep.
always a commit button. It's not going to
Yep.
autocomplete without you kind of sense checking it and agreeing to the changes that it's suggesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because I think the biggest thing is having technology and the human side of it kind of be one, right? And it organically is like seamless in its function, fit, and form is important, because you can't just overnight say, I'm going to have Copilot do this task, right? Without someone looking at the suggestions, as you mentioned, right? And keep feeding it that these suggestions are incorrect, or you need to tweak it, or this should be the right suggestion. And then over time, right, you could kind of rely on Copilot to complete certain tasks efficiently and accurately, but there still should be some oversight
Mm-hmm.
on it, right? At the end of the day. So,
Yep.
yeah, I think you made the point that you made about that Copilot makes suggestions is important, because just like MRP and MPS, right? You think about it, MRP and MPS is kind of like a Copilot in essence, right? That it
Mm-hmm.
looks at your history. It doesn't really look at history per se, but you have to kind of put in these variables like safety stock. You got to put in your
Mm.
reorder points. You got to put in, your lot accumulation period. And this is all Business Central specific terminology. So all our Business Central fans out there that are using Business Central, they understand how the planning worksheet works. These are our variables that we put into the item card. Um, for the planning worksheet to run off of and give us suggestions, essentially, right? Because it looks at demand, which is dependent or independent demand, and then it looks at these variables, right, or these static planning policies, and then puts together a plan, a suggestion, right? What's an emergency order? What's within the right time frame that you're ordering? What's late? What do you have to reschedule in and out? But that's a suggestion. And for every suggestions, there should be somebody overlooking saying, yeah, I want the system to take action on this suggestion, or I don't want to take action on a suggestion because X, Y, and Z reasons, right? So I think Copilot's the same way. Copilot knows as much as it knows, because business is so fluid. Business is moving. There's so many parts to business that you can't possibly have it know everything, essentially, I feel like, right? But it'll know, let's say 99% of how specific transactions and processes are function. But I think it's always prudent, especially with these early stages of Copilot being integrated into Business Central, to always have a look on what's being suggested out there and making that final approval. Let's run with it, right?
Before we dive in, let's just have a quick overview of what Copilot is. So, Copilot is Microsoft's way of saying artificial intelligence assistant, for a better word. Or as I
Yeah,
like to think of it as, it's the little paperclip from the mid 90s in Microsoft Word. It's like that on heat.
yeah, yeah.
It's like the future version of so Microsoft have called this Copilot. So it's the idea of it being an assistant to end users and everyone throughout the business to be able to do some content creation, editing, some processes that can be automated, or even things like training. So, and everything in between. We're seeing it in a couple of different ways. It's either through UI buttons, like generate with Copilot or some of the other topics that we'll talk about, or it's
Yep.
a chatbot interface that's using natural language input and then
Hmm.
feeding back what's been entered, crunching it through a large language model, and then spitting back whatever it should be returning. So there's a couple of different ways that we're seeing this, and with the birth of this kind of new way of working, it's being plastered everywhere. It's like the old Oprah Winfrey meme with the "you get a co-pilot, you get a co-pilot, you get a co-pilot." Like we're seeing it everywhere, right? So I'll kickstart us off on the first one here, which is reduced data entry. So what's Copilot doing to reduce some of this boring admin for us?
Yeah, it's you could have it set up to say, um, especially in the Business Central world, you could say, hey, um, put together a purchase order, the top 5 items I buy from a vendor, right? Really fast, right? It does that and puts together a purchase order with the 5 items with pricing, and you send it off. Um, it could create, look at your forecast needs, right? Look at trends on your business, right? Very quickly for you, and look at history. So it could create these smart views for you of your business that normally would require, a lot more work, right? You'd have to maybe take two, three different tables and 5 tables and put together a dashboard and put together a pivot and run these analysis. Well, it could do that all for you through the Copilot functionality, right? It tries to kind of make sense of your data, or find things out of your data that you might not even be looking for potentially, right? So I think that's one of the benefits there of increased productivity is working smarter, not harder.
Hmm.
And Copilot, I think that's the end result of Copilot, and for any application that Copilot's in, and specifically Business Central, to get the most out of that business data, because your ERP is so central to your business, right? And it holds so much of your transactional data day to day, and that transactional data is only as good as what you make out of it at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everyone is head down, putting in purchase orders, sales orders, doing shipments, doing invoices, doing, all these ERP related transactions, but no one's really kind of coming up for air and saying, oh, wait a minute, what does all this data look like? Well, I think that's where Copilot could really supercharge an organization and
Mm-hmm.
a business to start looking at that data, right? And in many different ways. I think point number two that we're going to talk about here, which might be a segue. I know you have one more thing for point number one, but just to give a preview on point number two, is the Copilot for finance, and how you could take that Copilot for finance, have it work with Copilot for Business Central, right? And how you could make that work together and get even better and better data analysis and modeling coming from the Excel version, what we call the Copilot for finance, from
Mm-hmm.
that end. So I know you had one more point for the increased productivity, Peter. So I'll let you go ahead and talk about that here real quick.
Yeah, I guess this does actually link into the next point, but the whole idea of when you said all of this data, I immediately think, oh man, that's so many different sub menus of where I've got to go within Business Central to get to that data. And what I see Copilot doing when I'm thinking about the interactivity through it as a chatbot is skipping this whole traditional menu navigation. I could be on a particular like customer and go, oh, what out of the range of chairs that I sell, which chairs are in stock and under $500 for this customer?
Right.
And it'll go this
Hmm.
one, this one, this one. And when I think about how I would get to that, I would have to go into inventory management. I would have to see what's in stock. I would then have to also go to the customer card, look at their price list, see which ones I'm selling to them for less than $500. I've got to go into different screens. Whereas I can put it into one sentence, and then through natural language processing, it would be able to then go to the relevant tables in the database and bring that back to me in one answer. It's like a whole new way of navigating through. Traditional menus are like gone, kind of thing,
Yeah.
with Copilot. It's for me, it's as revolutionary as the iPhone getting rid of the keyboard. I see that as productivity gains. Even those incremental ones like that, having to go into multiple screens, has been replaced with natural language input. So another area that could be spread across multiple tables within Business Central database of pulling together particular, whether it be statements or periodic activities, or just a straight up general ledger raw data extract that I would
Yeah.
then copy and paste or export into Excel and tidy up and remove the crappy columns that don't make any sense, then insert as a
Yeah.
pivot table.
Right.
Like all of that is gone through Copilot for Finance because
Yep.
it will do all that for you.
Hmm.
I know we've got a link that we'll mention from Stefano here that kind of steps through with some nice
Yeah.
screenshots of this.
Yeah.
That kind of explains what Copilot for Finance does within
Hmm.
D365.
Yeah.
It's really that link between traditional tools that people know, through a completely new interface, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's interesting because it allows you to take, if I just talk, we talk about the ERP, we talk about Business Central here. Take Business Central list views. Okay, let's say you're doing a general ledger list view export. You're doing a list view export for your purchase invoices or purchase receipts, right? Or whatever you have, take that list view, export it out. Because I think we did an episode on this on the Business Central Office integration tools that are out there, right? And then we also demoed the Excel integration. Yeah, if you haven't seen that episode, definitely worth recommend reviewing that episode because that's really neat and all the different ways you could leverage Business Central and Office D365 technology and platform to use the ERP data in many different ways. And one of the ways is exporting the data to Excel, right? And doing your analysis, manipulations, pivot tables, and all that stuff, and the edit in Excel functionality as well. But in this case specifically, is exporting data and then applying Copilot for Finance on top of it. So you're already in Excel, and now you're saying, okay, well, you know what? I have a ton of data here. Let's say I have 7,000 lines of receipts, right? Well, do you know how long that's going to take me to analyze all that to figure out, well, okay, well, how many invoices does this apply to? Or how many of these were on time? Or how many of these were partially received, right? Instead of you sitting there trying to figure out best ways to create different pivots or filters and things like that off of it, just go and apply the Copilot for Finance on top of that data. But now it's going to try to look at, provide insights and suggestions on reconciling that data,
Mm.
right? Is it perfect? Probably not, right? Again, Copilot's still so new. This is, I was hearing an article the other day. This is going to be bigger than the dot-com boom, essentially. What people are saying with this whole emergence of AI and the different applications and use cases, Copilot's going to change. It's going to get better. It's going to get deeper in functionality. So just the capability of it being able to take your data, trying to make sense of it, right? And will it hit, a home run each time based on what you export? Probably not. Um, but at least, you'll start understanding how to use that functionality. You'll start understanding how to apply better reasoning with that functionality, right? Or know when you want to use it versus when you don't want to use it, right? I think a lot of this is going to come to trial and error initially, like how well this is going to work for your job responsibility out of the gate as this technology is evolving over time. But Stefano does a great job of looking at this from a very broad standpoint where you're looking at Business Central, but also taking another, horizontal Copilot application, which is for finance, and merging it all together, right? Because ultimately, that's Microsoft's goal is that you're using all these different applications cross-functionally. And Stefano Demiliani does a great job of this in his blog, which we're going to reference here in our link below. But definitely recommend looking at that because I think that's just a starting point. I think that's just scratching the surface, to be honest, because there's going to be a lot of cases where you're going to be able to take Copilot for, let's say, Power BI with that Business Central data, right? And use it, manipulate it, and have that Copilot give you suggestions on how to leverage that data. Could be Copilot for Outlook, looking at your Business Central connector and how are you gonna use that and how it can it automatically find that hey you get an email from this particular contact every 3 weeks for this specific product. Let's be ahead of that and create one order for it so you have better purchasing leverage with your vendor so you're ordering it more in bulk, right? I think the possibilities are endless when you talk about Copilot here and the way it could talk back into Business Central. But I really like this one, Copilot for Finance, but because that gives you that idea that this is just not within and inside Business Central. This could go across platforms and how Business Central data could be leveraged.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And this is only really the start, isn't it? From connecting all of the Microsoft products and really making it feel like it's one ecosystem, having this already integrating not only from where the data is in our ERP, but then being able to talk to the programs that we've been using for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And this Copilot for Finance is a perfect example of that. Excel has been around, what, from the mid 80s?
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to use 21st century or 2024 technology, because I'm sure that 2025 is going to be, you know, on another level again. But 2024 technology with
Yep.
like 1984 tools,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really cool to see.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
when you were speaking there, I was thinking about another episode that we should probably do, and that's the whole thing about what do we need to think about when we are implementing these Copilot tools, because there should be some more training or new training. Because you mentioned, well, will it be 100% accurate? No. And I was thinking, well, maybe it's not because it's not understanding the user's input. So there's
Mm-hmm.
probably some training things that we need to think about and how we prompt for what we want out of it. It's not
Yeah.
you just go to a text box because it's not a human. It's very human like, but it's not human. You can't go to the input text box and go reconcile this for me. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean this? What do you mean reconcile? Across what date
Mm-hmm.
period? There's all of these things that you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you're making assumptions that the Copilot is going to understand what you mean. So some of the expected outputs can be seem inaccurate or bad. It might not be because of the tool. It might have been because of the prompt that you fed it in the first place. And that's like a whole new
Yeah.
world of training. This prompt
Yeah.
training or prompt engineering is
Prompt
the
train.
term that's
Yeah.
being used.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% right. I think as a community, right, the more we could test this and learn it, right, together and put this knowledge out there, right, I think we'll be able to weave this a little better into the fabric of every implementation, essentially,
Hmm.
because um, I don't think there's one right answer to to train on this yet. I think we need to understand more of it, its pros, its cons, its limitations, and as a community, if we share more of that, I think we'll be a lot more versed in providing the right guidance
Hmm.
around Copilot.
Moving on, point number three ties in nicely to where we just finished here. This is relatively new, as of I think 23.5, which is bank account reconciliation assistance. I think they tagged on the word assistance at the end. So
Yeah.
we know that you can import bank statements and import bank transactions, or even connect to your bank if it supports required connections to pull in bank ledger entries. And then a part of bookkeeper's responsibility then is to reconcile that against the ledger entries that you see in Business Central. And this is something that is already offered in Business Central, a very kind of simple rule based transaction matching, but it's not always right. And if there's things that are missing, then you've got to go and dig, and it becomes a pain. Like it might get most of them, but the stuff it doesn't get could be a whole world of pain and
Yeah.
hours lost trying to reconcile. So bank account reconciliation is already in, but when we apply a Copilot to that, now we're getting the full package. Really, the fact that it can look at ones that it can't match and detect where it can match. Maybe it's you've had several payments from a vendor, but only for one invoice. Well, Copilot can sense that and add up, these six
Hmm.
transactions
Hmm.
that hit your bank. They total to the right amount for this invoice that I could see in
Hmm.
Business Central, and it will match it. So it's like it's getting the stuff that the normal rule based can't get.
Yeah.
And the other feature of it, which is really cool, is that it can also suggest if it can't match it, maybe you've got a missing ledger entry, it can suggest which GL account that it should be posted to.
Yeah.
So if the bank transaction has, say, I don't know, it could be fuel, for
Hmm.
example, or company car fuel,
Yeah.
then it will take that description and look through your GL accounts and work out which one that should go to. So maybe
Yep.
you've got a GL account called travel expenses.
Hmm.
Now, that doesn't have the word fuel in it or company car, but through the large language model that Copilot sits on top of, is able to work out that fuel, probably the closest match to that would be the general ledger
Yep.
account
Hmm.
called travel expenses. Or maybe it just says dinner,
Yeah.
and that you might have employee entertainment. There's a GL.
Right. Right.
It has the large language model sitting underneath it to be able to suggest that. And again, it's a suggestion, right? It's going to go 75% perfect match. Here's 25% I didn't. And it will line out which ones it didn't and then
Right.
say, post to this GL account.
Right.
We'll
Right.
throw the screen up showing this. It's quite good
Hmm.
because it gives you that list. And then you can click on it and drill down and see your list of GLs. So if it didn't get it right and it was a different GL, then you can select the right GL and click save. There's a save button, so it knows every time it sees the word fuel, it should be going to this GL account instead. So it will start
Yep.
to learn. It's like a feedback loop. You're kind of training it on being right or wrong at the
Yep.
same time.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that from if you were a bookkeeper?
I mean, that's fantastic, right? It takes it all that manual matching that you have to do, for, your bank statement lines, right out of the window. Does it for you automatically, right? Make some fine tweaks to it, you with a fine comb, and you let it do its thing. And next time you come back and reload that file, right, or pick up that bank file from your bank, it automatically knows, right? It's learned that any changes that you made, this is how the changes should be moving forward. It just continues to get smarter for you.
Mm,
So what used to take you maybe a couple hours to do takes you just minutes,
mm,
and it you know this auto matches everything, creates your general journal lines for things that weren't even in the bank ledger entries, and you post away and you reconcile the bank statement. That's it.
yep.
And this is a task that usually takes some time for some companies to do. especially if there's always delays in entering in the transactions inside Business Central, right? But this just makes it so much easier. I think you explained it perfectly, Peter. That it helps bookkeepers to really reduce that day-to-day, what I would call this kind of like a mundane, maybe unnecessary task sometimes to make these manual matches when you would think that this should be a little bit more automated. I think the release of Copilot in this area was brilliant by Microsoft to
Hmm.
do it at this point because this is an area that you could immediately gain some very quick return on investment using Copilot.
Hmm. Yep. And as it stands at the time of recording now, which is March 30th, it is still as a preview. It's disabled by default in 23.5, but version 24, it's going to still be in
Yeah.
preview, but it's going to be enabled by default. So if you're
Yes.
getting these updates and you're applying them, you'll see on the bank account reconciliation screen, there'll be a new button at the top that says reconcile with Copilot. And that will then open up that pop-up box and
Yeah.
you'll see, I think you get like a progress bar as it was through applying. So it does, first of all, that first initial sweep on the rule base that is already in Business Central, and then kind of goes back through with Copilot for anything that it couldn't do through rule based matching.
Yeah.
So yeah, as of version 24, it'll be enabled by default.
Yeah.
A couple of caveats that I've seen on this is it works best with English bank statements in English language.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does have support for lots of other languages. It just works best in English, and it will struggle if you have mixed language. So if you have a bank statement where the description of transactions, some are in English, some are in French, it can struggle to be able to determine where where the languages are within one
Yeah.
document.
Yeah. 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 There's
But it's
a
early
limited
days, right?
release of that. Yeah, you're right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, number four. Now, number four actually is one of the earlier ones. I think this is the first thing or first feature I heard about when Copilot was being put into Business Central. I remember watching a video maybe last year, which was marketing, automatic marketing text creation
Oh yeah.
with Copilot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know it's come on quite a long way. So the idea here is that it can suggest marketing pros. If you had a particular description, if you're doing a marketing campaign, it could take the attributes of an item and then formulate text based on that. You have the ability to change how it reads in terms of its tone, in terms of its format, in terms of its length, and its emphasis, right? So maybe you want to emphasize the sustainability of the product, or maybe it's a product that's really innovative. You can have it kind of focus in on the fact that it's an innovative product. And I know we've got a screenshot that we'll throw up where you can kind of see this. And again, this is this whole idea of it being auto suggestive, where you've got the ability to change it, make it regenerate it. You can like trash it and start again, or click keep it. And that's the user then kind of sense checking what Copilot's doing for you there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the first features that Copilot came out with.
Mm,
They're testing it on the marketing of primarily it was for the Shopify connection. So
right.
the Business Central has this native Shopify connection. So these e-commerce merchants, they spend so much time just writing product descriptions, right, and titles, and is it the right tone, and does it encapsulate the right information, so on and so forth. So Copilot was first introduced here to help marketers create quick, effective product descriptions of their items, leveraging the item master and the attributes of that item, creating quick descriptions in certain tones, and then using that marketing test and passing that to back into Shopify and updating the product text on the relevant websites essentially through Shopify. So this was really nice and handy. Like I said, creating parking texts and descriptions for anyone that's in the e-commerce world knows that it is very cumbersome, takes a very long time. And will this be accurate again, 100% out of the box when you create the text? Probably not. But will it create like 80% of the text for you? Probably will. And you will probably just, make some quick little edits to it that makes sense for you. And then you'll hit publish and then boom, there you have it. It's going to be updated right there on the Shopify site for you that's connected to Business Central. So this was a really handy feature that saves a ton of time, I'm sure. If you look at the ROI investment on this is probably could easily just make up the cost of implementing Business Central because you need somebody full time to create product text for you, especially if you have 15, 10, 20,000 SKUs that you're constantly updating. So instead, the effort involved using Business Central, could go down by like 70% potentially
Hmm.
to create those tasks. So I mean that time saving itself is huge. If someone's spending 3 or 4 hours a day doing this, it could go down to as little as 1 hour a day, right?
Hmm.
I mean, you could justify that measurement in terms of a Business Central implementation or even license purchase. So I thought this is a really handy feature, which you mentioned. Um, Peter is right on in terms of how it operates and how it works. And I think this one is released already. This is
Yep.
not part of the to be released features for Business Central. It's already there. It's active. You use it or you don't use it. It's up to you. Generally, the customers that have implemented Shopify with Business Central usually end up using this functionality more than anything else. But not to say you
Hmm.
can't use it for yourself and extract that data, export that data, and manually import that into whatever e-commerce site you're using, whether that's going to be BigCommerce, WooCommerce, any other B2B site that you're using, platform, you could probably take this data, export it out, and import it there for your product. So
Yep. Yep. It's already in as of 23.1. It's
yeah,
in all production and sandbox environments. And again, just like the bank account reconciliation, um, version 24, it will be enabled by default. Point number five, the last one here, is really kind of the future, I guess, of Copilot and other areas. This is just the start. So I guess tip or benefit number five is the fact that this is the very start, and there's a lot more opportunity to have this throughout other kind of departments or other
yeah.
business processes you might have. So, Nirav, I'm going to throw this over to you again. Can you think of the other kind of major potential uses of Copilot within Business Central?
Yeah, I think we went through a number of them, but predictive forecasting for planning, right? One probably biggest gap in Business Central out of the box is the ability to look at historical usage and planning based on historical usage automatically. Now we have what's called demand forecast inside Business Central, but that's a manual entry of what your forecast should be. But to have a predictive forecasting process, you leveraging Copilot that looks at your usage from your item ledger entries manually and then automatically creates your demand forecast for you based off of that usage, and then that forecast is integrated into the planning worksheet. I think that would be huge. Um, auto matching PO receipts to AP invoices, right? Right now you have to kind of have to manually go get receipt lines and you put an invoice and try to go ahead and match it. But what if you just popped in the invoice, right? Scan the invoice into your system and then it automatically based on uh, uh, proper OCI tools on the AI side, on the Copilot side, suggested this is the receipt that this should be matched to, right? That would be really helpful. Um, Keeping GL accounts and subledgers always in sync. And what I mean by that is, a lot of companies have month-end issues all the time, right? Some people are doing manual journal entries to GL accounts, which is throwing off their subledger, inventory valuation report to the general ledger balance, right? Things like that. It's just, Copilot will always constantly be looking, how it can make sure that these are in sync. And if there's something that's going out of sync, you'd immediately, you know, could look at a table and see where it's gone out of sync, right? Day and time, specific layer in the system that caused it to go out of sync and make the correction properly. Automatic updates of vendor lead times for better planning, right? Let's say, vendor capabilities are changing constantly. Vendors are improving their machines. Maybe they're outsourcing themselves. They're getting it. They're finishing product faster. They're getting product to you faster. Well, that means that your planning process has to change. Your planning algorithm has to kind of adjust to that to create purchase orders in a more realistic basis that's represents the vendor's lead time cycle now. So instead of you getting something from a vendor every 10 day, in a 10-day lead time, maybe the vendor could get it to you in 3 days. Well, let's make sure let's have some predictive analysis. Let's have Copilot running in the background that says, okay, after every five, purchase orders, it goes and looks at what the average lead time is based on part and goes and updates the lead time for your items. So you could plan better, right? Be just in time. Don't hold a lot of inventory. Reduce your your inventory holding costs. Increase your
Mm.
profit margins at the end of the day. Creating more automated workflows for users, right? I think right now
Yeah.
the workflow process is a little clunky in Business Central in the way you could, really get that off the ground from an end user perspective. You need somebody that's a little bit more technical, but Copilot might be able to where you plug in a few conditions that you're looking for, where it just creates your workflow for you and you apply it and you're off and running, right? Really
Yep.
quickly. And the list goes on and on. I think the capabilities, it's how quickly Microsoft's going to be able to roll this out, Copilot for Business Central and in other areas, because Microsoft obviously is trying to introduce Copilots in other applications as well. But I think it's just a matter of time where we're going to see a lot of these different product improvements by way of Copilot
Hmm.
into Business Central.
I also like the idea of being able to create our own versions of Copilot. This is really cool because otherwise you're just at the mercy of what Microsoft might or might not do, or what they might or might not see as worth it in the long run. So this is Copilot Studio that I'm talking about. The idea of doing custom chatbots.
Yep.
Maybe you want a chatbot in a certain Teams channel. Maybe you need a maybe you want to do a Copilot chatbot for a particular department, maybe HR. Maybe you've got hundreds of employees with all of their questions about how much holiday they're entitled to, or how much holiday they've got left, or what's their illness procedure, or whatever it happens to be. Most of these are going to be fielded by HR assistants. Well, if you're a big enough company and you have some in-house developers that can kind of work on this and quickly learn Microsoft Copilot Studio, that's really powerful. You can have your own chatbot where people can go to and ask it questions. And some of these questions could need someone to go check the policies, read the hundreds of pages, and search across different employee handbooks to be able to answer it. Whereas if you
Yeah.
can feed that into your own custom chatbot, it's going to be able to read that in chunks of data and be able to very quickly answer a lot of these kind of questions. So I really like to see where this is going to go. It's certainly an area that I want to look at. Um, there is the ability to sign up and preview it. I've got access to Azure OpenAI Studio, but again, there's going to be the, the more specific Copilot Studio. It's definitely worth checking out. I think it's aka.ms/, Copilot Studio.
Yep.
If you go to that
Yep.
link, it'll pull you straight through to that whole area of custom chatbots. And again, this
Hmm.
is all built on that GPT engine, the one made famous by ChatGPT. Um, but remember, this is within the Microsoft ecosystem. So the model is trained. It's not
Yep.
like OpenAI, where they're feeding off your data and relearning or feeding in more information for the engine to learn on. It's already been done.
Yep.
So if you're doing this through Microsoft, if you read up all of the data governance side of things for Microsoft, quite it quite well explains how it now works. It doesn't send your data off to the engine to be used as learning material. It's
Hmm.
used just as the input or the prompt. So
Yep.
um, this is a really big area, I think, and it's really going to enforce the fact that I think AI is definitely here to stay. It's very early, um, and with the ability to create these custom solutions, it's limitless, right? It's like,
Yeah.
as you said, it's unlimited potential here.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to give one shout out to Dmitry Katson. We'll put his LinkedIn there. He's created a very interesting what he calls central IQ. It's a knowledge base of Business Central community in a kind of AI format. So you search, creating a job or understanding percentage of completion. Well, it'll go and find all the articles and all these different resources around that and give you a suggestion of, what the best way is to get the proper percentage of, let's say POC, percentage of recognition or revenue, essentially for jobs, right? We'll put a link to that. But that was an interesting concept. This was developed by Dmitry Katson. I've not met him personally, but I've heard, kind of read a number of articles around his work with AI and Business Central. So he is doing some amazing work there, which is great to see from one of our community members. But we'll put a link on our chat. But this is evolving. This is only going to get better. Um, I think we have responsibility as a community to make sure that it's all these tools and technologies being created for the good, and not for the bad, right? And what I see right now is that all of it is to make the business center experience a lot more robust, efficient, intuitive, and gain the most value of all that transactional data. And we'll be happy to hear about what do everybody else think about this on Copilot, on AI. What other Copilot type of use cases have you seen out there that your company maybe uses that we didn't talk about? Would love to hear those stories and maybe share those stories on our podcast in the coming future, because Peter knows and I know and I'm sure everybody else knows Copilot's not going away anytime soon. It's just going to get deeper and deeper rooted into Microsoft applications and especially into ERP.
Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Learn from you.
So this is really good. I think these are some great examples of where it's going. And I think given that it's super early in this Copilot integration into ERP, they're already swinging big on some of these really annoying parts of business process, especially for reconciliation and just the general drudgery of some of this admin that we're all bogged down with. So once that's kind of lifted and being a bit more automated, then I think we're going to really see some of the magic that Copilot can do once it's got rid of that kind of stuff, right? Because we say that it's like super clever and it's like, an all-powerful thing that can do amazing things, yet all we're doing is like chucking it the mundane admin.
Yeah,
It's like, well,
yeah,
once we've kind of solved that and it's reliable and it's working, well, imagine what it can do at a much deeper level than when we first of all thought it could do. Because it doesn't really
absolutely.
stop with just getting rid of the mundane admin. It's going to
Hmm.
be interesting to see what the next few years do for this kind of this space.
Yeah, agreed.
Good as ever. Thank you very much. I'm sure in the last 50 minutes that we've been talking, we've missed a whole bunch of progress in the AI space. We're probably way behind the curve again. It moves so quickly. But as we said, this won't be the last episode that we do on this, and I'm sure there's going to be more Copilot launches from Microsoft that necessitate more episodes in the future. But for now, this is a good
Yeah,
starting point. Thank you once again, Nirav. Until next time, I will see you
yeah.
in downtown Chicago.
All right. Have a safe journey. See you soon.
Take care.